Isn't this neat? Okay, I'm gonna grab a slice. We want to do a round of introductions. I see quite a bit of new faces, so that'd be good to know who everyone is. Yeah, we're gonna start with Pat. I've never met you before.
Pat Ramsey. I work for Craft Favorite, running the production team for the agency. We do enterprise digital solutions. Our history is with WordPress. We were the first agency to do WordPress development, like an agency would back in 2008. I've been part of this meetup ever since it started, so happy to be here.
Good to meet you, man. My name's Alex Marley. I'm just here to learn about WordPress. I've been meaning to come to one of these meetups for a few months now, and while I'm at a beginner level, I'm just hoping to learn what I can while I'm here. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thanks for putting this together, man.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Nathan. I am here with my buddy. We run a blog to teach people about automation, and we are somewhat at the intermediate level, but we're always looking to learn.
Nice.
Okay, my name is Ted Hare. I'm learning WordPress with the intention of doing some consulting, helping people with their WordPress sites. I've done a little bit of that. I'm doing some of my own sites. I'm a retired guy. I used to be a high school math teacher, and I'm also learning some PHP.
That's it.
I'm Brent. I've been using WordPress as a CMS for various web projects for about 13 years.
Fantastic.
I'm Adrian. Have a small digital agency, Overflow Digital. We just rebranded kind of fun. We work exclusively with WordPress. We develop WordPress sites for mostly nonprofits.
Yep.
Oh, hi, my name's Rick. I've been working with WordPress for a couple of years, worked with a nonprofit, helping them with their WordPress site, and then just playing around.
My name's Michael. I've mostly done Python and C++, but I started a job about 3 weeks ago doing WordPress, which will eventually be like plugin development and such. So I came to learn more.
I'm Carolyn. I have a site. I've developed several in the past, and I'm at a place where I really need to learn more depth into WordPress.
Okay.
My name's Danielle. I have a social media digital marketing agency, and I've got a WordPress site, and I think I know enough to be dangerous and look like I know what I'm doing, but definitely don't know the inner core, so always happy to learn.
I'm Bill. I've been doing WordPress for over 10 years. I've been hosting and building websites since 1994. So, always looking to speed things up.
There you go.
On my own service. I'm one of the targets.
There you go. Welcome back.
Thank you. We're actually together. We work on a blog site together, so we're just here to learn more and hopefully get our site performing better.
Okay. A few of you who've just joined, we do have pizza and drinks and salad. Make yourself at home. You're not going to interrupt me if you get up in the middle of it because you're starving. I might take another slice while I'm doing my presentation. My name's Ben. I'm the lead organizer for the WordPress Austin Meetup. I'm a software engineer at WP Engine. I'm the founder, owner, and operator of a small web agency called SkyPress. And yes, that's Foo, founder, owner, operator. My wife is our business administration relations. I had to come up with something to make it Foo and Bar. And today we're learning about just the very basics. Click, install, maybe check a couple of boxes and speed up your WordPress site. There are plenty of opportunities to use managed hosting to make someone else do all the work for you. But I think having a basic understanding of just what makes fast actually fast is a good starter to either know what you're paying for whenever you're paying more money, or if, like the example site we're going to show you, you only want to spend $5 a month on DigitalOcean, you can implement a few tools to do it yourself. So Oh, screensaver, don't do it. Haha, caught it. So, plug and play performance for you guys today. Now, first thing I want to start with is the clear understanding that page speed, you know, GT metrics, Pingdom, web page speed test, Lighthouse, time to first byte, all of those fun millisecond numbers that you might know about, that's not performance. Whenever I pull out my phone as a user and I have to wait for your site to load, that's performance. And there's a lot more that goes into that than a one-time test on a page speed measurement service. So just to set the boundaries, user perceived performance is far and away more important than technically it is a fast site. And we're going to start there, just as a heads up. So at WP Engine, I was on a team for a little bit that was doing quite a bit of research on measuring speed, right? Ourselves against competitors, ourselves against ourselves. And the one thing that we wanted to call out, just like I said, is we need to know how our users are experiencing our platform, which we broke it down into two different segments of what a user expects out of a site to be qualified as performant. And the first one is definitely, as we all probably know, how fast is the site? Everyone's asking, oh, fast, my site's really fast, my site is really slow. Support tickets all the time. Why is my site so slow? Like, well, lots of reasons, but we'll skip that one. Whenever a user says, I want a fast site, they're usually talking about, I want to see my site loading. And so when we use different tools to measure performance, it's important to note to them as just a benchmark. A one-time test isn't going to determine your site, but it's going to give you a benchmark so that you can make changes and see iterative improvements in the right direction for the right proper things. We, at WP Engine, we really enjoy using Lighthouse because Google built Lighthouse and their entire focus is on these metrics show what a user expects to be fast. So some measurements in Lighthouse speed testing for perceived speed include first meaningful paint, which is when the screen is loading, it's not just the first pixel that shows up, but the first main item to be drawn. It might be a background color, but it's showing content on the screen in order to give that impression that the site is loading. There's a lot of examples of fast might be a blank white screen for 800 milliseconds and then bam, my entire site. But to a user, that's slow because they're just staring at nothing and then boom, the site. So iterative chunks of render is perceived to be faster. So first meaningful paint is that very first piece. The next measurement is called a speed index. And it's a algorithmically computed time measurement that actually watches in a virtual window the site being rendered. And there's this whole arcing scale, but basically, long story short, in the main viewpoint, right, where the user actually sees when has the majority of the site loaded. And it's important to call out a speed index over total load time or final load time because we all, as modern website owners, developers, really like to throw a lot of, let's just call it Facebook tracking. Let's just be honest. It's Google Analytics, it's Facebook tracking, and it's something that's constantly loading another request every 5 seconds, every 1 second. And so when you look at our page speed tools, that website might never finish loading because there's always something being called. So speed index does a really good job of saying the majority of the site is loaded, the user thinks it's loaded, here's your time score on that. And another measurement, kind of along the same lines, Lighthouse had one way of doing it, web page speed test had another way, and that's the start render, right? So when has rendering of your website started? Just general ideas for when a user perceives site performance. Here's modern technology at work, and it's the notion of, I don't care how fast your site loaded, if I can't click a button because something else is loading and blocking the CPU, site isn't loaded. If I'm on my phone and I can't scroll, or it's really laggy because something's still going on, that's a terrible user experience. So the other user perceived performance is how snappy, how smooth, how interactive, immediately interactive your site is. And some other, measurements for that in order to see iterative improvements as we make changes are first CPU idle, time to interactive, and estimated input latency. I'm going through these really fast. We're gonna have a lot of hands-on live examples, right? So just, if you take anything away, know that user perceived speed is far and away different than a one-time test on GT metrics. Here's the next fun thing. Time to first byte. Who here has heard of time to first byte? TTFB, right? This somehow has become the de facto standard to indicate how fast a site is. And it's from the moment I say, go to google.com, did Google servers return a single byte in the response? And during our research at WP Engine, we found that there's been a lot of emphasis on going from 900 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds, right? We're the fastest web host around because we can load under 400 milliseconds time to first byte. But if we think about user performance, even if your first response is 400 milliseconds, but you have 10 seconds worth of images to download, is that really a fast site? No. You guys are too quiet. So, just like the famous band from the 80s.
Interactive part now?
So, oh,
We're at the interactive part.
just about. So just like the TLC band from back in the 80s, don't go chasing milliseconds. That was one of their top hit songs. That was it, right? Or was it something else?
That was it.
That was close enough, right? So when you look at increasing performance on your own site, go after the big ticket items if you find them, right? Don't go chasing milliseconds, go chasing seconds. So a lot of text up here, and this is largely for you to reference later, but the 4 kind of areas that I want to look at and help you understand better through actual just install the plugin and it helps. And also just the basics of increasing speed. You want to minimize the amount of processing that actually happens on your host computer. So the less computation the computer has to do, the faster it can return a result. And generally, whenever it returns it really fast, because there's not a lot on it, you have smaller payload. Downloading a 1 gig movie is a lot slower than downloading a 500 kilobyte image, correct? Exact same thing with websites. I had a ticket once where the user didn't understand why their site was so slow, and it was 80 megs for a single web page, right? Now, web page are text. When computers came out, hard drives weren't even 80 megs. And they had a single page that was larger than some of the first hard drives to ever come out. And they said, why my site so slow? I'm like, well, okay, all right, let's talk about this. The next step, it's a little bit more complicated, but the solution can be really simple, and it's not blocking DOM render. That's all I'm gonna say about that, but largely, best practice is to keep your style sheets loaded first and your JavaScript loaded second. Because JavaScript is going to interact with whatever was loaded, so there's no point in pulling in those scripts at the top just for it to wait for the entire page to load and then fire and kick off. Load it at the bottom. And there's some tools where you can click a button and it'll do that. And very lastly, lazy load. Lazy load is the concept of, I'm going to draw the viewport first, and then as you scroll, I'm going to load the next assets you need, right? You don't have to load the entire page if you're never going to see it. Lazy loading. So let's do some interactive. First of all, welcome to the new people who showed up. You guys only missed the majority of everything. I'm kidding. Totally kidding. Let's see, what are we looking at today? Is this the one? I clicked you. Okay, go ahead and close this. So I have a website that is live. You could all go to wpatx.skypress.code right now. I installed a theme. I installed plugins, and I pre-filled it with some standard posts. So, you know, I'm all about slick material design. That's the core of my business, and best products. But I can see it's a website, and this is costing me $5 a month on DigitalOcean. So you can get started on WordPress very easy, very quick. On DigitalOcean, I clicked install WordPress. So the basics, the absolute basics. Same kind of things that you would find with your $4, $5, $6 hosting on GoDaddy, or all of the other race to the bottom competition. So let's see how my very small, very minimum website performs. And we're going to use a tool called Lightspeed. If I can get my right click to work. There it is. So if you didn't know, in Chrome, they have an actual page speed performance tool built in to Chrome. You don't have to go to a third-party website, enter a domain or anything. It also means that if you're using a local development environment, like local by Flywheel, you can run your speed test, make your changes, and not worry about breaking your production site. So if we go inspect, basically we're going to come all the way over to audits. And Lighthouse gives us plenty of options on what we want to test. Do we want to simulate a mobile environment, a desktop environment? Do we want some information about how progressive our web app is, or best practices? I'm going to tick all these off now, but they're free. And in general, I'm going to act like I'm still in 2010 and run on 3G. So, standard website, what do we get? Get some audits, some testing. And I have Chrome extensions negatively affecting the page load. This is the first time. I've done this 15 times today. What a doozy. There it goes. Get out of incognito. Close you. You are closed. Do it again. WPATX. I should have mirrored my screens. Inspect. Audits. That's all good. Don't fail me now. Also, the new people, we do have pizza up over here on the side. Pizza, drinks, feel free, get up, enjoy.
So could that be a Wi-Fi thing, since you're on the public Wi-Fi or whatever?
I don't know. It's suggesting I audit the page in incognito mode while I'm in incognito mode. Let's do something different. Do I have... Don't fail me now. We're just going to run them all, because that was working whenever I did it. Lighthouse warming up. Still on one high. Almost there. All right. So my very basic, very simple site on a very basic, very simple host, running at an overall performance scale by Lighthouse at a 62, right? So that's our baseline benchmark. That's where we're going to start with. And some of our metrics that we can correlate to a user experience, such as speed index, time to interactive, first meaningful paint. We have scores. Let's just go with that. We have scores, but it's not the greatest. And you wouldn't expect much from $5 a month on DigitalOcean. So let's look at some plug-and-play plugins. Wow, that screen resolution is amazing. All right, first thing that we mentioned for performance. Don't stop, please stop. Minimum server processing. So the minimum amount our host has to do makes our site faster. Almost forgot another reason for that. I'm sure all of you have had your site blown up on Oprah and had 10,000 hits in an hour, right? Has anyone experienced that?
Every day.
Every day, yeah. I mean, it's just happened. Oprah's everywhere. It's something you got to get used to. Offloading requests, having your host do the minimum amount possible, and using other services who are ready to do that helps with scalability. Your one-time page speed test may not be what that 10,000th person who's trying to load the same site within the same 10 seconds is experiencing. So offloading, load balancing, delegating, and the quickest and easiest way to do that is with the CDN. And the quickest and easiest and free install it and go CDN is Cloudflare. I'm just going to say that. I'll put my foot behind it. Cloudflare. And what's really great, and I'm not going to set it up now because I don't want to wait 6 hours for DNS to propagate, but Cloudflare has a plugin. You activate it, you put in your credentials, and you click a button that says Tune WordPress for Cloudflare. Done. So, CDN, Cloudflare. The other best way to offload processing is to cache as deep as you can go. And I know on my $5 DigitalOcean box, I have full control over caching, but I don't want to get into it for $5. So there are plenty of WordPress plugins that will go through your site, every post, every page, just like a user hit it, capture that HTML that was generated that's being sent to your browser, and just save it as an HTML file. So that whenever an actual user hits your site, WordPress can just send it that pre-compiled document, content, and it's fast. Then Apache, talking to PHP, talking to MySQL, back to PHP, all of the hooks and filters and actions in WordPress, and then, oh, actually, no, I don't want it blue, I want it blue and a half, and then send it back out, right? It's just pre-computed, cached. The caching plugins I want to show last, because I also think caching is a last resort sort of solution. You want to get your site running as fast as you can without cache, and then cache the hell out of it, right? So, next step, minimum page sizes. Who knows what CSS is? Who knows what JavaScript is? Who knows what EFS is? It's okay, it doesn't have anything to do with what I did. But no, just today I saw, it was on LinkedIn, and there's a name, just all technologies on, so on and so forth. And the guy said, usually when recruiters hit me up, I say, identify which one of these technologies are a Pokemon. I started reading through and I think, that's some really clever stuff. I would love to work in Onyx. So, my favorite for taking all of that CSS, all of that JavaScript, and scrunching it down into as minimal as possible, and then also combining my 14 different Bootstrap.js files into one, is called auto-optimize. It's a weird spelling. But, just like it says, makes your site faster by optimizing CSS, JavaScript images, Google Fonts, and more, and it is a beauty. So we're going to start with here. We're going to activate this. And, come on, settings. Let's see what the very basic plug-and-play settings are. First and foremost, do I want to optimize JavaScript code? Yes. Aggregate the files or linking them all together? Sure. I didn't check these because that was not on by default. So far I've activated it. CSS, optimize, yes. Aggregate, yes. Ooh, aggregate inline, sure. You can read what that means, but it was default, so I don't really care. Just trying to do it as simple as possible. Everything else is off. HTML, ooh, here's a fun one. Anyone ever look at HTML, be able to see the entire structure and it looks really beautiful and pretty and you can read it? Computers don't care. Computers don't care. That formatting is for you, not them. So optimizing says we're going to remove all those white spaces and line breaks and make it one single line of code. Because that's all computers care about. CDN, if you're not using Cloudflare, you can use that. Sure, this all looks good. Save changes, empty cache, and let's come redo our page performance metric. So we started with the 62. What do we got? Run it. So whenever I say don't rely on GTmetrix and Pingdom and web page speed test, one-time run to show you, hey, I'm doing great or I'm doing terrible, use it to see changes, but don't rely it on a one-time score saying, oh, I'm good. But look at this. We went all the way up to an 87. Our speed index is now in the green. That's great. What was it before? The
25%.
4.8 seconds. I installed one plugin, and now users perceive my site to load 3.1 seconds. That's 1.9 seconds faster, right? Tackling the big problems, don't go chasing milliseconds. I think we can do better. All right. Which one is you? Uses. All right, so we have optimized. What is the next big thing that we can tackle?
So was that without doing anything with images?
Nothing with images, which
Nothing
is
with-
what we're doing next.
Right, okay.
So my phone screen is this big. It takes pictures this big. And whenever I upload that picture straight to my website, that picture is still this big for no reason at all. So Smush is a service that will losslessly compress your images into proper sizes. And important to note, losslessly means it'll look the same on your phone. Smush, I've run this once before, it smashed a whole bunch of things. WPMU, they have a great product. It'll walk you straight through it. If you can't get through their products, I don't know how you installed WordPress in the first place. It's that simple. So they do great things, but just for shits and giggles, let's recheck. I already did it. Should have refreshed all of this. Anyway, do I have, let's see, some settings. Automatically smush my images on upload so I can install it and set it and forget it, and it'll take care of it. This might be tricky. I don't know if the metadata they're stripping includes alt tags, which is very important for accessibility. Do a little bit of research.
It's easy to check back.
Yeah, it'd be really simple.
I'm pretty sure that's your exit data.
Exit stuff, yeah.
Is
It
it?
says in the description there, it's just like the focal length, date, time, like when the photo was taken.
Yeah, that's
Perfect.
That's your exit, that's not gonna be
Good.
all that.
A lot of times for privacy, you don't want that stuff in there anyway.
There you go. I'm not the smart person in the room. You can completely resize images. It wasn't on by default, so I didn't do it. Save those changes. Let's go rerun it. So at 3.1, this is the one I love the most, but it's not the most valuable. But it shows what a user would experience roughly. Who wants to put bets on what it's going to be? Hurry, hurry, it's almost done.
92 and 93.
88. My site in particular, images were not the problem. Maybe for you, but this was chasing milliseconds. What else we got? I think, if I remember correctly, yeah, so those are, from what I've experienced in my 6, 7, 8, whenever WordPress 3.0 came out, in my experience, those are the things that are the big ticket items, right? The things you can immediately do to see immediate results. Compress your JavaScript, your CSS, combine it all together, smush your images, reduce the payload size. The other thing to do, cache, 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 and cache. So, my favorite cache, strangely enough, is by Automatic, WP Super Cache. There's lots of options. W3 Total Cache is great. It's more complex. You're gonna have to click through a lot more. There's a Lightspeed cache that, if you have other Lightspeed services, is really good because it's basically third-party cache and delivery on your WordPress, but a little bit too complex for what we got going on here. Where is it? We'll get to those, we'll get to those. What was the other one? WP Fastest Cache is really straightforward and simple. The performance between Super Cache and Fastest Cache I've experienced to be about the same. So let's look at the settings of Super Cache. Everyone still with me? Am I getting boring? Right? Everyone awake? Do we need to get some coffee? Okay. This one is really complicated. There's a lot of settings to it. First thing you want to do is turn on caching. Important. Okay, we're done. Let's go rerun it. We're sitting at 88 in 3 seconds. Who thinks it's going to be faster? Yeah, a few people. What if I told you it's not, because we just primed the cache?
Yeah, it was the first.
That first view is on cache. So let's go cheat the system. All right, who thinks it's going to be faster? Oh, come on, everyone should raise their hand at this point. Woo! We shaved off 0.2 seconds. Pretty clever, huh? Here's the next fun tidbit. Is it possible we're not going to get any faster than this because we're running on a simulated 3G network? Is 2.8 seconds quite fast? We're at 2.7 seconds, quite fast for a 3G network?
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't be discouraged because it's all orange, right? We went from 0.8 to 0.7 and now we're in the green. The specific numbers chasing the milliseconds don't matter. It's the total understanding that now I'm serving smaller CSS and JavaScript files, I'm serving smaller images, and I'm serving a statically cached HTML version of my site, which means that whenever I go on Oprah tomorrow, which, by the way, CapVax set me up with Oprah, they're really, really awesome. They gave me a badge and everything. Anyway, my $5 DigitalOcean box still won't handle that, but it'll do better than what it could have. And that's the very basics and bottoms of plug it in, run the performance.
So are you chasing the color then, really? You just like green is, like, if you get it to green, then you're good to go?
No. You're chasing what you know could be wrong with your site. If this was a photography blog, I may not need static HTML caching, right? Because all that HTML is image link, image link, image link, image link. But I may need to optimize the hell out of my images. If I'm doing e-commerce, caching may not be the right thing for me. Because if a user adds something to their cart and that's saved in your cache, then the next user who comes in is going to see that cart. Because your server is just saying, here's the HTML, I don't care who you are. That's not good. There's many workarounds for that, but the most important thing is to identify the large ticket items, bring your seconds down. And then just the last two plugins that we used is helpful, but we also are still now chasing 100 milliseconds at a time. And I don't know about you, but I can't even blink in 100 milliseconds. So what, don't waste your effort, sort of thing. I mean, why do we all have websites, right? Is it to optimize 100 milliseconds at a time? Is that what we live and die and breathe for? I don't, right? We want to create content. Any more questions? We're not entirely done, but that's the total gist of this presentation. What you got?
I have a rhetorical question that
Okay.
might be beneficial to others. I want to cache the hell out of my site. Why don't I just turn on all the caching plugins at once?
Oh. Who wants to answer that? Go for it, Pat.
You don't want to divide by 0.
Yeah.
You get into cacheception. You're caching, and caching, and caching, and caching.
You're caching your cache.
Yeah, and then you may have your server doing that as well, and now you're actually going the other way.
Yeah.
If you're not crashing your site, you're making it slower.
Does that make sense? Too many chiefs, too many hands in the pot. It's not like Windows and antivirus software where if you have 10 of them, your entire computer is going to be fast, because 10 systems checking the same file to make sure it's safe. That's top performance right there. Yeah. Okay. Let's turn a bunch of this stuff off. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to give you a few more examples. This is what I showed you, a good way to kind of custom pick and choose the different unique aspects, specific aspects, but there are a few options that are an all-in-one and actually aren't that bad as an all-in-one. The first one is WP Dev Hummingbird. Hummingbird handles caching, it handles header compression, it handles CSS and JavaScript minifying, it handles CDN if you opt into purchasing it. It does a lot, all in one. I highly recommend it if you want to be a WPMU fanboy. I mean, no, they're really good. I really highly recommend it.
Would you recommend that as compared to using like purchasing that compared to using Cloudflare?
No. I would, all right, here's the fun thing about Cloudflare. Cloudflare will also CSS, JavaScript, minify, compress at the edge, which means if all of you guys try to request my laptop, Cloudflare is smart enough to say, I have processing closer to you, I have processing closer to you, so I'm going to just serve you from here because I've already grabbed it from there. And while I'm serving it, I'm going to compress and optimize and give it to you. And it never touches my machine. CDNs, sometimes I've seen slow down a site because they introduce an entire other level of network complexity. This was also when I was chasing the milliseconds on time to first byte. Cloudflare will make your time to first byte slower. Cloudflare will make your site experience better with 10 million visitors. So serve locally as much as you can, reduce the payload on your actual server. That's all really great for scalability with a minimum impact. We're talking like as fast as you could blink impact on your actual performance. Yes, sir.
Is Cloudflare similar to CloudFront on AWS?
Is CloudFront a CDN? I've heard, I haven't used CloudFront.
It's a different technology, or
I think it's different.
sorry.
Here's something we can do. CloudFront. Come on, Mr. Google. CloudFront is a CDN. So CloudFront is AWS's CDN. Cloudflare is their own product, their own company entirely.
Okay.
But they are two CDNs.
Okay.
I love Cloudflare. Cloudflare is free. Cloudflare is not the fastest CDN. Cloudflare is free. Aptly named, Fastly is one of the fastest CDNs you can use. Fastly is very, very expensive. Okay, Hummingbird. What I really like about Hummingbird is that it's inside of the plugin running the Lighthouse test for me. Genius, right? And you can just walk through each item, very quick, easy, tick the boxes, load your site. If it's broke, go and tick it, right? It's okay. Get your settings through. Hummingbird, fantastic. When I was doing my performance, Hummingbird eventually got the same scores as whenever I just cherry picked the individual plugins to do the same thing. And again, that's because 3G is only going to be as fast as 3G.
Is Hummingbird aggregating Lighthouse scores, or is it its own scoring tool?
Lighthouse is an actual open source program.
Okay.
Right. So at WP Engine, we set up an entire Kubernetes cluster to go do performance testing on all of the domains of all of the sites that we host using the Lighthouse npm package in JavaScript. That was a very fun project that isn't finished, but that's because I went on maternity leave. Auto-Optimize has a lot more options than the very basic things that we used for it, but it also does a fantastic job for the basic things. EWWWW, EU Image Optimizer, is a competitor for Smush. What's great about both of these is they now do their image compression on their own servers instead of your own, which, very good. I mean, we could do this all day. If we wanted to, we could say, search for caching solutions. And there's lots of them. The biggest thing to think about, what I wanted to hopefully convey, is why. Why do you need cache? What is it actually doing? Why do you need to minify, compress your static files? What's it actually doing? Right? Why do you need to optimize your images? But what I love about WordPress is there's 100 different ways to make it better. And that's because WordPress is great. That's why there's 100 ways to make it better. That's it. That's all I got. Yay, thank you.
So I have another question.
Yes, sir.
In page speed test, there's a tab on there that is I don't remember what it's called, but it's a visual representation of like your domain and then other domains that are connecting to it. Like and on the nonprofit site that I'm working on, it's super slow. And when I ran that, I could see like Facebook, you know, there's a Facebook plugin on there, and you can see basically all of these parasites that are attached to your, and you know, it kind of visually represents how much time they're taking away or kind of their impact on the site. Is there something like that in DevTools or
I don't know if there's a waterfall like that.
Or something else?
I know PageSpeed Insight runs Lighthouse as its basis for its measurements with some cherry on top of it. WebPageSpeedTest.org has an entire waterfall breakdown that I know just the audit in your Chrome tools doesn't have. So it's okay to use third-party tools to run your tests. Yeah, they largely run off of maybe 2 or 3 different speed engines, right, metrics engines.
Yeah, that was a good visual representation because I could show people, look, here's what that, you know, that one element of the page is doing to the overall site speed, because it's very visual.
There's also nothing wrong with taking 20 seconds to call another site and get something back. As long as you do that after your page loads. Because the user experience is, it's loaded, I can read, that was fast. And all of those cookies and trackers and ads and pingbacks and just the nightmare of stuff as an engineer, can't even fathom how we got there. Like, it's just genius. All of that can load afterwards. Take 2 minutes, doesn't matter. As long as it isn't blocking the user experience. If the first thing you do is load your Google AdWords tracking, you'll get instant hits in Google AdWords and then instant bounces because your site isn't loading. So they're really worth it.
Which,
Sir.
which plugin did you use for the lazy loading?
There's one of them, that's a very good question, I didn't even touch on it. There's one of them, it's in the options.
Optimize has that as an option under the images tab.
Yeah.
If you're already using that for your minification, then don't load another plugin.
Yep. Yeah, auto-optimize, you can do it just for minification, and it's finally better than BWP minify, better WordPress minify. I couldn't even find better WordPress minify in the repo anymore. But, yeah, auto-optimize finally got the best. But in image optimizations, we can skip the smushing because we have smush or EU optimizer, but they do have an option for lazy loading images. Yeah. And this is basically, I mean, it says right there, you know, like load all resources for above the fold page first. So your viewport's gonna load, then as you scroll, there's some JavaScript wizardry that'll load in the rest. Or it'll also just rearrange. I have to check if they do this. Another way of lazy loading and non-blocking rendering is rearranging the entire DOM structure, right? The entire HTML structure, so that literally top down, code-wise, the first things that need to load first. Secondary things load afterwards. There's a lot of more complex tricks like CSS splitting or inline CSS or like per component CSS in JavaScript, where your footer may have its own CSS built in and wrapped in around it because you don't need to load that until you get to it. In JavaScript frameworks, there's a lot of component lazy loading. It's the same concept. Don't let the browser worry about it until you actually need to see it. But yeah, auto-optimize lazy loading images is actually the solution we had for the person with the 80 meg page site, right? Because by the end of it, it could be 80 megs, that's fine. The first 800 pixel phone screen view doesn't need to be 80 megs of everything else you're not seeing. Yeah.
One,
Yes, sir?
last one.
I doubt it, but go ahead.
Are there any, do your extensions have any impact when you run these tests? Like if you have extensions running, do they impact the scores?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, these tests use your computer resources. And however much RAM is already being eaten up because you have Slack open and 150 different tabs open in Chrome and Zoom open, which by the way, delete and uninstall Zoom.
Release a patch.
Yeah, it did patch.
Ring Central hasn't, but Zoom has.
Yes. So yeah, if your resources are already capped and it takes, it says it's simulating 3G, but really you're like H+ because you don't have the resources, it's going to impact your score. Which is another good reason to use third-party page speed performance measurement tools. The thing to keep in mind, that one-time run isn't your final score. Right? Make a run, make a change, make a run. And so even if you have your resources loaded up and you get a terrible score, and then you make a change, and you get another terrible score, but it is a second faster, that's iterative improvement. And that's okay too. Which is another reason I was saying, like, don't chase the colors, don't chase the A+, chase visual, meaningful improvements.
What's the numbers?
Hmm?
It's the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, milliseconds are gonna kill you. You know, you're gonna go nuts. You know, I'll stay up all night chasing milliseconds. That's what I do.
I mean, we have,
But I look like you said, the greens. Somebody asked about the colors. I really don't care about an A because Google's gonna tell me an A means one thing. Web page test is gonna tell me an A means something else. And pingdom's like the Lego blocks of page scoring. I don't even know what their colors mean half the time.
Yep.
But it's those numbers. It's the when is it interactive? What's the one? Fully loaded. You know, first interactive byte. Those are your numbers, and that's where you start your spreadsheet. Put those in, and then run your test again, and then see what where the improvements are.
and I think GT metrics and pingdom give your scoring solely based off of your time to first byte.
Yeah, their documentation is confusing because they talk about load time versus response time, but they don't present those numbers in the scoring.
Yep.
And it's useless to me. Because I have clients who send contracts in like, you know, response times must be this. And that's a term. That's not a, you know, that means, okay, the page isn't loaded, but it's responding. Well, that's not time to first byte. It's like 3 different numbers. And it's nowhere on Pingdom's site at all.
We've had premium and enterprise customers at WP Engine ready to jump ship because they could save another 80 milliseconds at another host. And for massive sites like that, that's a major investment for 80 milliseconds, but no one will know the difference.
Well, 80 milliseconds times 10 million hits is a massive amount of time.
Yeah, but per user, doesn't matter. Long conversation,
Yeah.
don't chase milliseconds.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah.
right. If you're in a case where you have to chase milliseconds, you'll know it because you'll have every executive in your company on your phone all at once telling you it's slow.
Any other questions, comments? Did you enjoy the pizza? There's plenty. I mean, it's just my wife and my 6-week-old can't eat pizza yet, so please eat the pizza.
Start 'em young.
Yes, sir.
So we actually recently ran into a little bit of a different performance issue, and some of this, I've been playing around with some of this stuff right now, and I haven't necessarily seen a lot of results at the moment, but I've also done some of my own tweaking. I don't know what all I've done up to this point, but just hadn't done anything on the website for a while, and then all of a sudden, like, no changes, no updates, no nothing, and then just all of a sudden one day we're getting really, really low, slow load times, and I start getting 500 errors. I'm like, okay, well that's an issue on probably the host end or something that got updated or something. So I go in, I'm talking to them, and they're like, oh, you're exceeding the process count. And I'm like, oh, okay, because they have a limit of only 25 processes can run at one time. And they're like, you have way too many plugins, that's the problem. I was like, well, okay, but I've had the same number of plugins for months and never had this issue. And they're like, well, you're running 25 right now, that's the problem. So I go back and forth with them for about 2 weeks. I leave all the plugins on, I turn them off, same problem, and basically just going back and forth for a while. I've got probably maybe like 15 plugins right now, and I've hit them up last week, and they're like, oh, there's only 5 processes running. Well, before then, a few days before that, there was 25. So I know there are ways to look at the processes, and they give me lists, but they don't seem to give me an indication of what's actually running. And so I don't know. I've been kind of back and forth on that for a while, and like it's working fine now. But
Yeah.
it's very concerning because pretty much all they kept doing is pointing me to paid solutions. Like, oh, you need to CD in, you need to get all this other stuff, you need to pay this money to fix it. I'm like, dude, it was working before. Like, why is it not working now?
One thing I really love and hate about technology is it's a temperamental red-headed stepchild that one day will just wake up and decide to do something. No, it's cold and calculated. You might not have changed something. Something did change.
Evidently, but
What that is, couldn't track it down. But a computer does what you tell it to do. It's the users who don't know what to tell a computer to do, or the software, or the developer who built that, Or, I mean, it could have been something 17 dependencies down for PHP that might have gotten updated. They did a hot swap patch in your data center.
I guess part of what I was trying to go back and forth on with them is, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, like, is this an issue with something that I did and or have control to change? Or is this on your end because I'm on a shared hosting plan and like you guys are just throttling me, or like what's the real story here? And, never really got a straight answer. It went back and forth. It's working now, so I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's shared hosting support, where they're not really going to give you the output of the CPU processes, because that's also other people's processes.
I mean, they gave me lists, but it's the same entry like 20 times. There's only like 5 entries that are unique. And I'm like, okay, look, like I'm not a Linux expert, but in Windows, I can actually tell what file is calling the process. Can you not do that? And they're like, no. So, I don't know. Or maybe that's a sign that it's time to change to better hosting.
Yes.
HostGator. And I don't like it.
DigitalOcean with Server Pilot. Is
Yeah.
an easy way to go
Seriously.
if you don't want to do your own server setup. So, and your cost is about equal to a decent HostGator shared plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost up on our term with them, so definitely actively seeking alternative solutions. So,
$5 a month, and it's an actual virtual private server. Like, I'm the only person on there, have full root access, and I can do whatever I want on it. $5 a month. Or you go the 10, or you go the 15, or the 20, right? Or you go the 2,000, however much you want to pay them.
And I don't know, this might be getting further off topic, but how difficult would you say for someone who's never done one before would be a data migration over to a different host? Really simple.
Yeah, it can be really simple. It can be really complex. It's usually really simple. Before there were really great tools to do this for you, it could be really simple or really complex. But migrations have come a long way, even in the last 5 years.
Many times there's tutorials or something that show you how to migrate just look at the site itself, and usually they have tutorials.
For DigitalOcean, there's a ton of good tutorials for migrations and WordPress and Drupal and all the various popular tools to get them set up and running.
And there's plugins that'll do it for you,
Yeah.
files and data, all works.
All you got to do is take a MySQL dump and back up WP content, move that over, import MySQL file. Technically.
Technically, paths to change and stuff
Point
like
domain.
Point to come in, yeah. Is there any other questions that you were hoping to learn that I may not have covered? Any expectations that I failed to meet? And don't be shy, like I'll take serious criticism. Yes, sir.
Okay, so Lighthouse is a Google product,
Mhm.
and you were using it in an Chrome extension, is that correct?
Chrome Dev Tools.
Chrome
Built
Dev.
into Chrome.
Yeah, it's built into Chrome.
It is, so every version of Chrome has it?
Yep.
Every current version of Chrome has it.
Okay.
But also, like, when was the last time you manually had to go update Chrome? So, yes.
I have auto update.
So, in general, yeah, every Chrome.
Right, and it opens that's.
Yeah, run your audit.
Okay, okay.
But again,
It is
it-
also online. I mean, you can run it off their PageSpeed website.
Yep.
It's the same interface.
And if you have an entire node server, you can install the npm package and programmatically run it as many times as you want. As much or as little as you want to do. Anything else? No? Going once? You guys have been fantastic. You don't have to leave. This is a community, so feel free to stay, chat, engage.
More pizza.
Yeah, eat more pizza. You don't even have to talk about any of this. Just WordPress, cats, I don't care. Cat blogs, WordPress, boom, connected, done.
Ben, are you reading Baby's the Good Parts now?
Say it again?
Baby's the Good Parts, are you reading any books on child?
A friend of mine got me a book that's called How to Reprogram Your Baby. Okay, guide for software engineers.
Nice.
And like there's references about like something, if it's not working, you know, contact your service provider. By that I mean like a pediatrician. It's just full of terrible references like that. It's really clever.
So let you basically.
Yeah, at the start of the place, don't read this whole book. Here's the index. Here's the index. When you see this problem, know how to reference this. You're a software engineer. You know what you're doing.
So I can
Give that to the dad jokes.
Oh.
So they've sort of,
Practice that just a little less.
Yeah, that's probably good. And how do you actually manage it on your real website? Is it just sort of like to give you a section? Yeah, I looked up, there was a ton of.
How are you? Good. You too. How has y'all been doing? Have you created more content, automations? Okay. Okay.
I looked at the share options, like our website is so low traffic right now. We're just going to basically keep around, figure out what you're trying to do.
Okay. I thought about y'all the whole time, so I've been like, oh, here, maybe this is an opportunity to share it.
Software engineering. I started in support and management and business intelligence. Did a lot of data building things.
I stared at my
6
computer
years.
for 6 hours yesterday trying to do
Alvin's red. Red.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna hop on like a plan.
Where are you from?
I work at a company in town, but I'm not from
So I have travel. Very slow. My problem has been like
That's why I highly recommend local bus oil or you can like station sites. It's like back to the wall. Not whack-a-mole, all you want. All you want. Yeah, what you just say.
again back to the
That's all right. If you open this up, you can cover the dome. So that's not password.
I guess part of my fear was just
You can sign in.
because I've never completely had to manage a website.
Alvin Graham.
I guess it would
Very cool. Thanks for that.
Your secret that you know it will be saved. Not gonna steal your credentials. Just a keystroke right now.
So I kind of know CSS, look at CSS,
for service, one
HTML.
set up one
With the next step of like learning more about like the start JavaScript, it's like to be able to work more.
Checks all the boxes.
Oh yeah. Or do you have a recommendation?
That was my only thing is because I don't know.
A year and a half ago, I would have said no, learn PHP. So Gutenberg and blocks.
I mean, like,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I know obviously, you know, I always want the latest.
Any both?
Yeah.
I think the most valuable thing is to pick
I'm very much.
one thing you want it to do. And then regardless of what it takes. I'm not sure if you wind up building something in Unity, like just get that working.
Like focus on the
Yes.
end goal.
Yeah.
And then work back.
That's how I learned everything about computing and programming. Because I could do Hello World, anything. That's all right. Describe the problem, what do you think?
No, even when my site comes up, I'm still adding that WordPress, that WordPress background on it, you know, that to fix that, you know, that WordPress dashboard on his dashboard. What are you reading that? Like when it comes up, like if you go straight, I'm still having that WordPress dashboard on top, like the menu there. on top.
The bar on the right?
Yeah.
It's because you logged in.
No, but when I log in straight with my site, how do I do like give my site to someone? How do I get rid of that? You know what I'm talking
Yeah, I know.
about?
Right, so you don't see it now,
Yeah,
right? It's not there.
yeah.
As soon as I log in.
Well, that's what I was
Thank you.
wondering too, because I know, I'm sure a lot of these, part of what you're paying for a backend service, it's not only so that it runs, but it's basically paying for their server and backend as well. But to, like, even just a Google account, some 15 gigs for free.
So if I know WordPress, now does it make any big deal knowing HTML, CSS, JavaScript? Do I have to know those to be able to WordPress do that?
You don't.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that.
You don't. Those come in most helpful whenever there's not a pre-existing plugin or theme or solution, and you need to make it exactly what you need. Then being able to do those tweaks in different languages is what's most helpful.
That's,
But
but there's always a plugin for this, now everything has more than one.
but even say you install WooCommerce, right?
Yeah.
You have this wonderful thing, everything else looks good, but it's just those products aren't lining up. Maybe they're staggered and you just want them all on one side. That's when knowing a little bit of CSS aligns these URLs. But just to get started, have to.
I had this idea